not that I needed to do that. Calling the budget work session to order. Ms. Rain, will you call the roll?
Melissa Mason,
Here.
Josie Barnhart,
Here.
Pat Bradford, Judy Justice,
Here.
Tim Merritt,
Here.
David Perry, Pete Wildebohr.
Present.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair, I have an amendment I'd like to make, or a change to the agenda. I'd like to add an invocation, please.
Do I hear a second? Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 6-0. So we will have the invocation. We usually do that before the pledge. So now I will entertain a motion to approve the amended agenda.
Second.
Okay. Oh, geez. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes 6-0. Are we ready with the invocation? Perfect.
I'm Gail Tabor. I am the pastor of Salt Inclusive Methodist Community, and I invite you to pray with me, y'all. Holy One, today as we gather to do the work of providing for the education of all the children in New Hanover County, we first pause to remember to be grateful. We give thanks for the absolute joy of living in this beautiful place and for the beauty of your creation and our mandate to care for all that is in it, especially the children who are often seen as the least among us. We pray not just for the physical safety of all the students and teachers in our schools, but that we would be creating spaces where all are seen, heard, and appreciated, not just because of our differences, but because just as beautiful music is made and harmony comes from blending of different voices, so the beauty of humanity shines in our differences. Guide us as we face times of concern and fear, that our choices and our vision will be ever toward all, and especially to all of those who are most vulnerable. May the decisions made here be inclusive and equitable. Even when we have difference of opinions, give us a spirit of unity. Help us not just to listen to others as they share their point of view, but to hold them in full regard for all of our shared humanity. Aid us and aid this body to work as a unified team as they lead New Hanover County Schools. May every child and family know their worth and their value to this body and to the community at large. In our ever-changing world, we pray for these board members and for the various level of official and staff who serve the students and the families of New Hanover County Schools. Bless this body with their decisions, that it would be a benefit to all those who work for, attend, or have a child or person for whom they care in New Hanover County Schools. We offer this in all the names of the one we call holy. Amen.
Ms. Justice, will you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Ms. Bradford, you are up with the board member stipends.
Okie dokie. You should have a handout, and it's got a little paper clip on it.
This one.
Just makes it easier to find than the other pages. Yeah. And I've had some conversation with Ms. Sutton offline, and so I have a cheat sheet. And that is included in this, is it not? Is there a second page? Yep. So you can see the explanations that we asked for last time that we met on this. And my thought was that we look at contracted services, see that about 4 lines down, workshop expenses, 5 lines down, and skip all the way to the bottom. Supplies and materials, that's not much, it's $400, and then computers, software, and supplies, that's $1,550. Let's go backwards for that one. Start with that one, the $1,550, because if you go to your second sheet, the, yeah, there it is. Second to the last, that tells us our online web hosting is $3,650, and Assembly, which controls our meetings and all the information that's stored there, it's specifically just for the board, that's costing us $10,900. And if you bump up to membership and dues, the North Carolina School Board Association, the policy updates, that cost us $6,900 a year, and the online web hosting costs us the $3,650 from below, and then our membership is $29,952. So every year we have to pay the School Board Association $29,952 to host our online web portal for policy. Did I get that right? Okay. So I don't think we can touch that, was my point. And then the last thing on that list, other food purchases, you can see how little we've spent this year. We certainly cut way back on our food, although I think there's somebody treating us more often than not. But those would be the places that I would look to take some of the money or eliminate the whole category. For example, the contracted services. We didn't use it at all this year. Workshop expenses, we only used a portion of it, a very small portion of it. I don't know what that was for $573. So if I do my math right, and one of the things that I hadn't thought about that I talked to you about last time was that if any board member is paying taxes on the money with a 1099 or a W-2, excuse me, there's a Social Security match, as every person that gets money from the school district does, and I hadn't accounted for that in my math. So I've identified with some of those things just under $21,000 that we could rearrange and slide up into item number 2. But I want input from you guys.
Just a point of clarification. The top 2 on the second page, the Center for Creative Leadership, I do believe that came out of the superintendent's budget. I don't think that came out of the board's budget. Ashley, is that correct?
It did come out of the board's budget.
Oh, it did come out of the board's budget. Did money move over, or was that money already allocated in there?
That money was already allocated there.
Oh, I heard that wrong. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yep.
Barnhart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to ask the question, with our membership and dues, I like the Assembly hosting, so I don't really want to discuss that, but is there a chance that we can renegotiate that? I don't know how often it comes up for negotiation or renegotiation. My understanding is it's based on population, is based on the fee that we pay, but I don't know when the last time we had an adjustment, potentially if there's an opportunity for savings there.
So it auto-renews, so we can definitely, I think it's 60 days notice, we reach out to them and have a conversation, or if you wanted to look at seeing who else maybe can provide something similar, then we could certainly do that this year. But yeah, every year we have the opportunity, I want to say it's 60 days notice to start the conversation. I don't know how willing they would be to adjust the rate for us, because I think they use that same logic, a certain amount based on ADM for everyone that they provide the service to. So I don't know how flexible they are there, but it doesn't hurt to ask.
Dr. Merrick.
Well, I was just going to follow up on that. So they adjust it by ADM. So when was the last time they adjusted us? Because we have lost ADM.
So it's a range, and we haven't fallen into the lower range yet. But I'll double check. I don't recall off the top of my head the range.
I'd be interested,
minimum and max.
I'd be interested, like Ms. Barnhart, to find out, you know, sometimes when you look at, let's say, an insurance bill and you find out, oh, you know, Uncle Jack that was on the policy 20 years ago, I'm still paying for him, and he passed away 10 years ago. There's things that you find when you look that you can do away with. So I'd look to see if there's any extracurriculars in there anywhere that we don't need, and maybe bring that down.
Okay.
Dr. Merrick?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank my colleague for the work that she's done to try to figure out how, within a constrained budget, how we can maximize our expenses. But I think it begs the question, it seems to me, especially when you look at the county commissioner's salary, that they've chosen, there's needs all over the county, but they've chosen to take money to pay themselves a little bit more. And the question would really come up, it seems like if we ask the county commissioner to pay the board more, we think of it as like if we get more, schools get less. But that does not have to be the equation, right? The county could choose to say, you know what? We gave ourselves a huge raise. We could give you at least a modicum of a raise, right? And it wouldn't have to mean that they would give less to the schools. And I think it's worth a conversation worth having.
Ms. Justice?
Yeah, I certainly agree. What, they give themselves an 80% raise or something?
82.
Yeah.
And raise taxes.
And they've got their own offices. Did you know that?
I can get you one.
I don't want an office. I've got one at home. Yeah, we work hard. They work hard. I would say, having been involved with so many different boards and bodies over the years, this is an extraordinarily hard-working board, and we work very responsibly, I do believe. I think it's a very realistic ask. They want a good job done, and we do a good job. But if we have a little help as far as, like people like me, I'm on a fixed income, I'm retired, I was an educator, I don't get a lot. It would be nice if we, at some point in the future, had other people able to work, be on the board because they had a little more, just like younger parents, people that work full-time jobs and things like that. I mean, it's just respect and realism. Just my suggestion.
Mr. Wildebohr?
You look at it, as I shared with Ms. Mason on the way over, you think about it, this week, we've had at least 4, 5, 6 meetings, and last week, same kind of thing, so, I'm just comparing apples to apples. I have no idea exactly how many meetings the county commissioners have, but I can almost bet you they don't have as many as we have, and they make quite a lot more money than we do. So it's not all about the money for sure, because, in education, you're never going to get rich doing what we do, definitely what we do, but, it is still, it makes it a little bit more palatable to have 8 or 9 meetings a week when you get a little bit more money, so.
Ms. Barnhart?
Thank you. I appreciate what my colleagues are saying. However, I also don't want to just compare and say, this is what we need to do. I think it's smart for us to be going through our budget to look at where we can potentially cut in addition to the consideration of talking for an increase as well. So I do agree that these line items that my colleague has pointed out, I would be interested in discussing lessening those in addition to make it more palatable when we talk about, I'm not downplaying the work that we're putting into this job at all, but I do think it's smart for us to come over and look at our finances and reevaluate some of the things. So,
Ms. Bradford?
Just to point out, so you know the math, we are currently, except for the chair, are at $12,732. You know that, it's $1,061. That is 1/3 of what the county commissioners receive. They're close to $40,000. This is a stipend, but it's still a very low stipend. And I would remind you that I gave you the math last time. There hasn't been a raise of our stipend since 2018. In 2018, all they did restore it back what it was in 2008 when they took a pay cut. So you theoretically could argue it's been 17 years since this board saw a raise, and I still would like to keep it within this if we can. I think that's fiscally responsible in this year when we're asking the county commission for more money. And I would never want to take a dollar that could pay a teacher, a portion of a dollar, yes, but not the whole dollar. Because I just think, again, one of our board members isn't here, he has a full-time job. I just quit working full-time and to have 2 part-time jobs so that I can accommodate this schedule. And it's punishing. Last month there were 30 engagements that we had. And we're going into budget season, so yay.
Dr. Barnes?
I want to make sure it's clear to those watching at home and to the public that you guys are trying to do this in a way that's both optically and ethically responsible. I think that while I do believe that you guys should see the same sort of cost of living increase that employees receive as well, I think it's very clear, and I want to make sure people are aware that all of us around this table respect the fact that you're trying to find the money without hitting the bottom line of what I have to do for families, students, and teachers. So the fact that you're trying to do that within your own funding, so it doesn't affect the school system or what we're trying to build, I just want to make sure that was a clear statement that the public hears before you get a lot of noise, right? This is a way to say, let's address this without addressing the needs that we already have everywhere else. So I just want to make sure that that was clear, and that wasn't said out loud.
Dr. Merrick?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Barnes. Maybe I didn't say it clear enough, but we absolutely need to advocate for all the money that our schools need. What I keep hearing is this kind of sense of that, oh, well, we just can't ask. Oh, we just can't ask. And I don't know that, I want to make it very clear, if we do make an ask, that it's very clearly separate. The schools need this, and we cannot compromise on that. And, by the way, we could also really use a cost of living increase. And right now, this year is the year that they've reevaluated the property values. And so now they're going to say, well, how much are we going to lower the tax rate? How close to tax neutral are we going to get? And this is actually probably the best time that they could ever fit it in if they were going to.
Ms. Bradford?
So I would propose that in addition to the things I just looked at, if we looked at our our travel reimbursements, that's the middle part of your page. We see these pick up some change from some of the board members aren't with us anymore for this year, right at $2,700. But that's not long-term, can't count on that. So I would say the things I identified, and then if each of us took $500 off of our travel money, that would pick up another $3,500. So that puts me to $20,950 each and every year. And I would put that in the form of the motion if you're ready for that. But then I would say to a board member that wanted to go higher, then we ask for that small portion higher out of general funding, but not the bulk of it. Again, I'm based on the numbers that Ashley gave me. I can't remember. How short am I, Ashley? I thought I was $7,500 short of the goal I had, but. My goal was to get each of us an extra $4,000 a year. That's all I'm asking for the whole year, not a month, a year.
Wow.
So just short of 30,000 total.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I picked up from contract service, I think our numbers were a little bit different, just because we didn't work on it together. But the contractor services, I picked up 5,000 because that was the remaining balance. And then picked up the 4,650. I'm sorry, I'm jumping a little bit. That was at the bottom for the computer software. And then I'm picking up the 4,000 or the 7,400. Back up to the top, that was the workshops. And then for supplies and materials, I think I picked up 400. I think that was your number too. And then were you bringing anything in related to the food purchases? I put in 2,500, but I wasn't sure how much you were including for your reduction.
I didn't touch that. I was going to put that to the pleasure of the board.
Okay, so I take that out. And then I didn't have anything in for the board member travel, please. So that puts us at 17,450. So if you're gonna, if the board agrees to do the $500 reduction from their 3,500 annual allotment.
That would put us at $20,950. And, maybe we took half of the other food purchases. So take a $1,250 there. Now we're at 22,200. Oh, I like that. 22200. And half of it, 12,500. So maybe we do that in our budget, and we could do that today. We could have a vote and do that today. And then whatever the difference is that the pleasure of the board is to add to it, then we ask Dr. Barnes to find it, or we ask Dr. Barnes to ask the county commission. One way or the other, county commission has to sign off on it, if I understand it correctly.
I think that's correct.
I'm 90% sure that I'm
And
right.
for Board Member Appreciation Day every year, I'll get you some paper, legal pads, pen binders. So a little care package for you guys.
Thank you.
For your supplies.
We want those little sticky notes
And
with
I've
the
got-
tabs,
yeah.
like Julie
I've
has.
got supplies if you guys need it. But, Ashley, what is if you calculated what a traditional cost of living increase would be, is it traditionally 3%? If they get that close, could that be something we build in, or does anything we ask the county, anything that we don't have already, we have to ask for?
You have to ask for
Okay,
a
I
pay
got it.
increase for the board.
Okay, got it.
Dr. Barnes, I had given everybody a list of the cost of living, if we're using the ones from Social Security, because there's a federal one and then the Social Security is different. And in 2024, it was 2.5, in '23, it was 3.2.
Yeah, I see it.
So what I did was I took from the last time there was any action at all, 2018, and I compounded those to present. And that's where I got the figure that I started working from.
What I was asking for is if it was a little short, if that 3% would be the difference.
I hadn't figured that, but I had thought of it.
So right now, dollar-wise, we're short about 10,400.
And so it's
From
a little more-
fully
It's more than
funded.
3%.
If you do the 4,000 that you had talked about earlier.
But I'd be willing to do that plus 3% if you guys were. It's better than nothing. Dr. Barrett?
Yeah, perhaps that final figure, we say, we've gone in here, we've slashed everything we can, and we're still $10,400 short. Maybe that's an ask to the county commission. Just as, in order just to get us a COLA for the last 17 years, we're still short $10,400. I mean, that seems
That's
like a
good
small
point.
ask, right?
It's a good selling point.
Yep. Ms. Barnhart?
I just want to add on too, that potentially there's an opportunity if we renegotiate membership fees, if there's possible wiggle room of that.
Yes,
So it might even be smaller than that differential that we're currently calculating. I would second that motion if you're putting.
I don't quite know. I can try to make it.
I was going to say, could you like rephrase all of
Okay,
that?
I
just so that we're all
move
clear?
that we pick up contracted services for $5,000, workshop expenses for $7,400, $500 from each of us on travel reimbursements, the $400 of materials, the $4,650 on software and supplies, and half of our food purchases. Still leaves us a couple of pizzas. And we take those from here to give ourselves an increased stipend, and then we ask for an additional 3% from the county.
That's your motion.
It is.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, signify.
There was one,
Dr.
just quickly.
Dr. Merrick?
What is 3%? How much is that? Figure?
I don't know. Dr. Merrick, you don't know, but I have to use a calculator.
It depends on where you start. If you start at 3% from your current number, or 3% from what you
Yeah.
would be.
3% from your current number is right at 3,000.
But if we look at the
What's
accumulated-
3% of the new final number? Is it 20, right under 21,000?
Hold on a second.
No, that's only going to be a couple hundred more dollars.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Dr. Barnes, you did.
Ashley, don't kill me.
I like the way
What-
this is starting.
What if we didn't reimburse them for vehicle travel and just built that into a travel stipend?
A separate travel stipend.
Like, what if your salary included a normal travel stipend? Now, we'd still have to, some of this travel reimbursement is rooms if you go to, when we went to board ethics training, when we went to, things like that. But you guys built into my contract a travel stipend. And I
then
take
you
my
would have to
car and
turn
drive
in
it around.
the form, the reimbursement form every month or every other month. You wouldn't have to do that anymore.
We wouldn't, oh, that would save so much time and labor.
But it would be part of your salary then. It wouldn't
Right.
be,
Right.
that could get you the rest of the way there.
I'd like to get the rest of the way there. It was right at, was it right at 40? That was my goal.
Right at 40?
Oh, it was was it $30,000?
Yeah, it was 30.
Okay.
Now, that is funny money, because
It's
then
funny
you're-
money, yeah,
Right,
'cause
you know,
we're
'cause
going to
then-
get that anyway,
Well,
if we do the
Yeah.
work.
Only if you drop it, that's where you
Yeah,
get
it's
either way.
really
I live in
just
Carolina Beach,
moving.
I'm doing driving.
Right, because then you're paying for the wear and tear on your car, you're
Right.
paying for your gas, but a lot of times you guys double up when you go somewhere. And it, you know, I mean, there is a way to make that a little more palatable.
and then when we rent a car, it's on our own dime.
If you hate that idea, it's mine. If you love that idea, it was Julie's.
Well, can we compare it?
Yeah, I can work up something and share it out with you guys. Yeah, I'd be glad to.
So then I would table our motion until next week. Yeah.
You want to talk about it at agenda review? You want me to bring it back to agenda review next week, or?
Can you turn around that fast?
Third,
Okay. But you guys can just add it when we get there.
third is it.
Whichever's higher.
But we're still going to do the 3%.
I'm not sure yet now.
Because the
Well, whatever she sends me, we'll send it to everybody.
You were quick enough to catch that, weren't you?
Well, I was already on it.
Whichever's
before you
higher.
said it was fine.
All right, we got a lot to cover, you guys.
I think.
And while Ms. Mason's talking, Ms. Justice and Mr. Merrick, you have the minutes from the last Finance Committee meeting. There's some very, very important points towards the budget in here, so I would really ask you to read them. That's why we gave it to you in paper, because we know board members don't read emails with attachments. So there's some really good stuff in here that will answer questions that you have. It's a lot of the things that Dr. Barnes has said about 16 times, and now we have it all written down.
Are you good, Ms. Bradford?
I am good, thank you.
Needed, necessary things that Dr. Barnes said 60.
Well, it keeps us from having to take notes.
All right. Now, I am going to turn this over to Ms. Sutton to talk about the proposed budget changes.
Okay, so before we get into that, let's talk about your handouts. I just want us to kind of know what we have in front of us and figure out how we want to file that. So there are a couple of sheets that are summary, so they're one-pagers, they're hole punched. One says summary of proposed budget changes, the other one says capital outlay committee update. So those two, there's not anything new, they're just summaries of information that we either went over last time or we'll go over today. So if you want to put that at the front of your binder, you can. Not trying to micromanage you can put it wherever you like. But if you want to put it at the front, since it's a summary, then you could do that. And Ms. Bradford already pointed out that everyone has a copy of the notes from the last Finance Committee meeting. So it summarizes also in a different way, a two-pager of some of these changes, budget changes that we're talking about last time we met and today. So if you want to just stick that in the front of your binder, it's not hole punch, you're welcome to do that. And then you have two more sections that have tabs. You have one section that has a tab that's called, and I believe it's on the front of your stack, is Financial Wellness Review is the name of the tab. Am I going too fast?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so that is the same report, perfect, it's paperclip, thank you for that, because mine, I don't have the tabs. It's the big stack. This isn't new information, but we thought you might like to have it with a tab to put in your binder. So this is the report that we received from School Operations Specialists when they did our financial wellness review, so you have that. So if you want to put that, my thought is at the back of your binder, because that's not necessarily part of what we're talking about for this year's budget, but it's nice to have maybe if you want to refer back to that in a future year or later on during the budget process.
But the rule is, if you don't put it where Ashley tells you to, you can't ask her where it is. You're on your own. I put mine where Ashley told me.
Here's the thing, there's things in here we're going to deal with all year long.
And then you have another section that also has a tab, and I believe the tab is NHC or New Hanover County Budget Work Session. Once again, we're not going to go over this, but this was something that was shared in the Finance Committee. And we've also included their budget calendar in case that's helpful for you guys. And we've given you a copy of the presentation from, I believe this was their second budget work session, but this is where they talk about the tax rates and the difference revenue based on if they increase the tax rate or they keep it the same or they lower it. So we just thought that might be helpful to have, and I would also put that at the back of your binder since it's just information. Okay?
And that's the one we got from county government.
And that's the one we got from county government, that's correct. And then you also have a handout that's hole punch that's on legal paper. And this is exactly the same document that we were walking through last time, but it's bigger. So you can read it now. So if you want to pull out the other and replace it with this legal, the document on legal, so it's easier to read, you're welcome to do that. If you want to leave the small print in there along with the larger print, whatever works for you. And then, most importantly, there is candy. There's chocolate with Miss Jenny Wren, and there's also some mints. So if you feel like you need to go get a handful of candy, then please feel free to do that.
Is that coming out of our budget, though? I mean,
So I flipped the bill on that one, so no charge.
You can have 3% of what's in the bowl.
So, yeah, so please take advantage if you'd like to do that. All right, so now I believe that's our housekeeping. So I believe we're ready to get back to our binders. We're all settled, everybody's ready? All right. So if you go to your binder, so this would be your legal page that we just talked about. I would have put it behind the budget changes tab, probably the first document behind the budget changes tab. So once again, this is just the bigger print, the same thing we went over at the last work session. And so if you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we got to page 2 of this document. We had talked about superintendent budget priorities, and we finished up, I believe, with the schools, talking about school specialists. Does everyone agree, or do we need to go back and cover anything we covered last time before we move forward?
I agree.
Agree? Okay.
Are we going to have this on the board? Sorry, I thought we were.
Yes. And so, Ms. Anita, can you bring that up? So we're on, yep, the proposed budget. There should be an attachment. If you want to click on that.
Sorry, I thought you were actually doing stuff in this.
No.
Booklet that was not in the.
No,
assembly. Got it.
yep. So, yeah, so we're just going to go through the handouts that you have today. Okay. All right. So the next, if we don't have any questions from where we left off last time, the next item on page 2 is utilization of the state allocation benefits. And so this is, you see that's a negative 500,000. This is what a new approach that we're able to use that came out of the consulting services. So we are estimating, and this might be a low estimate, but we're estimating savings of approximately $500,000. And so what we're able to do, and what he showed us that we weren't aware that we could do, is really when you have state paid employees that don't participate in the health insurance or the state health program, and they're coded as a position allotment. We have the ability to request from the state a refund related to that employee not taking part in the state health insurance program. And we still have to use it for an employee's health insurance, but it can be a local employee's health insurance. So it's still, we have to use it for health insurance, but we can pay for someone else's. So that's kind of the flip that we're able to do. There's a process we have to go through to make that request, to have access to those funds. And so once again, we're estimating we're going to be able to have reimbursement of approximately $500,000, incorporating that new procedure into our process.
And remember, when the state pays a position allotment, they pay soup to nuts, the whole thing.
Right.
If we pay someone locally, we're 100% responsible for all of their costs, including health benefits, social security, all the rest.
Right.
So what this would do is allow us to lower at least some of the burden of a local employee where we pay 100%.
That's exactly right.
Ms. Redford?
Can we go back a couple years and get what we didn't get?
We cannot go back, but we are looking at this year. So we can't go back to a prior year because those years are already closed with the state, but we are looking at this year to try to figure out what has happened so far this year that we can take advantage of and get some of that reimbursement for this year.
Dr. Merrick?
I can't find where you're at.
Yeah, really.
Look up there, it's the second row
Yeah,
from
I
the
can-
bottom.
Yep, so
Which document are we on?
Number 5.
This one right
Number
here.
5 on your
One that has the.
Foldy one?
proposed budget changes.
yeah, yep,
I know, I couldn't find
it's the second page.
All the way at the bottom?
Well, I just wanted, if people were following along online, I wanted them to see the document, so.
Item
Yeah,
5.
you should have it in front of you. Okay.
Thank you for that break, I got the candy. Appreciate that.
If you go to item 5, page 2, on the attachment. If you need it bigger, like I do.
And so do we feel good about that? Any conversation about that reimbursement that we're building into the budget?
Woohoo.
Right.
I feel great about it.
Me too.
That's why this is a good year to ask for a stipend increase, because increase of income, technically.
The next item, now we're going into the pre-K section. And so I'm going to go line by line. It's about $700,000 that we're including here, additional funding for pre-K, because as you might recall, so this is the last line on page 2. This year, we used Title I carryover to fund the pre-K shortfall related to the Head Start grant going away. And so it's about $1.2 million of Title I funding that we were able to use. We're not going to have that much funding for next year. We have looked at Title I. We're anticipating having about $300,000 in Title I that we can use for pre-K next year, but it's going to all go towards transportation. And so that's what we're building into that Title I budget. Also, just so you know, this year we also used Title I money for pre-K snacks, but we've identified a way where we can change the timing of when we offer pre-K snacks and they would be free. And so we're working on that. So that's about $80,000 we were able to save just by making a change in the timing of when we provide the snack. So we're still working through that to make sure we're not out of compliance with anything, but we feel like we're going to be able to do that.
Does that make it fall under the USDA?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. And then, so then the next thing that we're showing here, all of these next items are things that currently are being covered with Title I. So it's not an increase to the pre-K budget at all. This is just shifting from Title I funding to a local funding source. So it would pay for half of the pre-K behavior support specialist. Then on the next page, which is page 3, we would be picking up 1.5 positions that are like clerical pre-K positions. This data manager, which is enrollment for pre-K, and treasurer, which is bookkeeping and reporting for pre-K. 1 parent liaison, half of the pre-K director's salary, 3 teacher assistants for pre-K, and then also 3 teachers for pre-K. So those are the items we would be picking up.
So
Mr. Wilgore.
Thank you. So, as I read this, I just want to make sure I'm reading it properly. Pre-K director basically makes $160,000 a year?
160.
$161,000 a year?
When you include in retirement
Including
benefits.
retirement benefits, Social Security. I lumped it all together instead of breaking it out separately.
Gross.
That's one of those questions where you
Yeah.
say, what is the amount that the employee earns versus the investment in the employee are two different
Right.
numbers. Yep.
Right, that's right.
Ms. Farnham, did you want to say something?
I was trying to remember if supplement was in there too. I can't remember if she gets a supplement or not. Sorry.
I just had a question on whether the pre-K snacks also included the EC pre-K.
My understanding is it does, but I know Shannon is meeting with Joanna. I want to say it might be this week.
Okay.
And they're going to talk about those things.
Okay, perfect, because that's a cost in the EC budget. So
Yep.
that would be a savings there. too.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yay!
Okay, so that completes the budget changes in our operating budget, but I wanted to make sure I give you guys time before we shift over to capital in case you have any questions that we've gone over today or from the last time we met before we move to capital.
But if you will look back on page 1, about 8 rows down, you see total increase in revenue. $9,954,300.45. That, of course, includes the $8 million increase that we plan on bringing you as part of our balanced budget to go to the county commissioners. Now, if you look at the very bottom of page 3, the total increase in revenue with the support from the county that we're hoping is $9.954 million. The increase in expenditures is also $9.954 million. So without the capital, what you're looking at right now is a balanced budget. Asterisk with the 8 million.
Ms. Bradford?
Actually, before we go on to the next, for the people who are listening, and we'll listen to this later, just gently go over the difference between the operating budget and the capital budget so they can keep them separate.
Sure. So the operating budget does not include capital, which we're getting ready to go over. It does not include child nutrition because they're self-funding, and she will provide a budget for next year based on her anticipated revenue, and we will bring that to the board. I don't have that information yet. And then it also does not include our other restricted funds, which are our grants and donations and things like that, because when we receive those grants, we're told how we're able to spend those funds. So that's not included here as part of our operating budget. It's not as flexible. Those funds have to be spent a certain way, so we don't have as much flexibility. Good question. I appreciate you asking that. Anything else? Okay. So next, we'll move on to capital. So if you flip over, you'll see a green page in your binder.
Hang on, we need to put this in our binders.
Yes, teacher.
And if you need a copy, do you need a copy? You're good? Okay, I just want to make sure you're good. Yep,
It's in Assembly.
it is in
This
Assembly.
is the one with the green line and the blue line.
It's the green sheet. Dr. Merrick, I'm just going to go make copies real quick.
But yes, if you go to the
He doesn't have a
capital
set.
outlay committee update in Assembly, and there's a capital request spreadsheet, yep.
B6, capital request for consideration.
And that's what we'll be going over.
You can make it big.
It looks like, Judy, is the summary not in there? Is the capital summary in Assembly?
It's on the first page on the agenda, that's why I didn't print out.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. So, the capital, the front sheets that we went over, there's a summary here. So if you wanted to see it summarized, it's there. But, the green sheets, if you have your binder, you should have a green sheet in your binder. It's behind the information we just went over. And so it's behind the budget changes tab in your binder, is the first tab.
Dr. Mayor?
And you should see a green sheet. Yep. It's right, it's behind those white pages. There you go. That's it.
You don't have a packet?
You said green streets on white, that's what it is.
You didn't get a packet?
All
There's a
right.
packet right there.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're all together before we move forward.
Don't write on my paper.
Okay. All right.
No, really, it's good.
We can share.
Oh, you wrote me a note.
Okay, so the green sheet is really a summary of all the detail, and we'll go through the detail in a minute. But this green sheet, if you look at the top table, it shows the recommendations from staff in the different categories. So we have repairs and renovations category, technology, furniture and equipment, and vehicles. And this year, we've also added a new category, which was actually a request by the county to split out and have a separate category for facilities capital. So that's new this year. You'll see request for next year and the following year. The total requests submitted are 41.3 million. And so that's if we were to request everything.
And we know that feels like sticker shock when you look at it all at once, but part of building a transparent process is we want to bring you everything, walk through it so you know what we're talking about, and then at the end of this, Ms. Sutton and I are going to ask you to give us a target number that you think is appropriate for our capital budget to move forward, and then we will bring you back a capital budget with your sort of indications on what you think are the main priorities that you have, and then give us a target, and we'll bring that back to you when we bring you the budget. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But we really feel like it's more important to bring you the whole shebang and let you sort of process it with us rather than sort of tell you what we think you need. Does that make sense? So I know that this feels like a large number, and this is an accurate large number, but it doesn't mean that this is all things that have to happen today. We may have to make some choices.
Ms. Barnhart?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for clarity's sake, we were asked to now have a facilities capital line in the budget because from the county lens, that's a different potential funding source that they could tap into to support our facilities for New Hanover County Schools. So typically, it's been about $4 million in capital that we've received. The last couple of years has been higher than that. But I just want to say that clarity. So this is a new line item, this 11 that we see. And then typically, we've been operating on, the county expects around 4 million asked, but in recent years, it's been closer to 6 that we've been, 5 to 6 that we've been receiving.
One year we got right, I believe it was right at 10 million. It's kind of skewed things, looking at it over the past 3 years. But yes, before that, it was around 4 million. And Eddie, if you remember something different, please correct me.
Yeah, that's correct. I was just going to provide some clarification on the difference between repairs and renovations. Those are items that take care of our existing facilities. You know, it's maintaining what we have. Facility capital are improvements. You know, it's adding something that we don't currently have.
Thank you.
And so they wanted our capital request broken into those two categories.
So you're correct. The reason they asked for that because the funding that they have available to use is, there's certain funding they can only use for the facility capital versus other repairs and renovations. It's two separate funding sources for them.
Thank you.
So example, Eddie, changing the locks in the building is repairs and renovations. Adding a vestibule is facility capital. Sort of a good example.
Ms. Justin?
In the past, I know that we've always needed so much more than we ever get.
And what is the breakdown, I think I've heard bits and pieces of it, of the expectation with this? This is upfront and what we need, correct? Straightforward. What would be, ask Eddie, what would be the expectation having gone through this past experiences with budget process? What would you just say generally, and not that it's going to happen, but generally, what would you say in the past when they've looked at these figures, what would we actually receive as opposed to what we request? I'm just, from the past experience.
I would say on average, it's that $4 million a year in capital. But because they asked us to break out facility capital separate from repair and renovations, I would expect probably $4 million in repairs and renovations, and then I don't know how much they can afford to do in facility capital. And we have those two line items prior.
And as a result, this is one of the reasons our buildings keep deteriorating, correct? Would you say? Possibly?
Absolutely.
Definitely, okay.
So the example I always use is if you took all of our roofs of the entire district and broke it up into an equal area so that we're replacing that roofs on a regular basis over a 20-year cycle, we don't receive enough in capital to maintain that.
And to continue this conversation, I'm sorry.
I know Dr. Merrick has a question, though.
Can I just, real quick, because it's connected.
Okay.
All right. So this wasn't always the case, was it? Because if I remember right historically, because I think we might have talked about this in the past, I'm not sure if we have or not, but at one point, weren't they funding the schools on a much greater need basis, so it didn't get so low that the schools were deteriorating at that point? Am I wrong about that?
I don't believe the county was funding us at a higher rate in the past. I do know when the lottery, when the lottery started, there was a 1/4-cent sales tax that went to school capital construction. And so if we were getting about 1.7 to 2 million from lottery, we were also getting 1.7 to 2 million out of that corporate sales tax. A few years after the lottery had begun, the state eliminated the corporate sales tax, so it put it back down at even prior to the lottery.
Thank you for that historical information.
Dr. Merrick?
So I understand that you're breaking it out into a different category, but you're not actually adding new requests. This is part of what we've always needed. It's just that we're putting it in a different way.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Bradford?
On your minutes from the Finance Committee, we noted that Commissioner Zappel noted that the lottery was originally set at 40% of the money raised from the lottery for education, but the current North Carolina legislature has capped that amount at $100 million. It's capped it, so we don't get the percentage that they had originally planned. They've capped it. So that would be something I would like to add to the legislative agenda at some point, to go after that, uncap it.
And I think you can see many of the things, the legislative agenda is a really good point. Many of the things we're talking about is if the state fully funded our assistant principals, you would see $3 million more that we weren't using on staffing and local that could go to capital. If our AIG number was capped at 20% instead of 4% from the state, some of that money would, you know what I mean? So some of this is not it all comes in and we have to winnow it out. But sometimes the county is compensating for things that the state is looking for doing and vice versa. We go back to our EC and the amount that that's funded at. So you found this cap being put on a lot of different things. So what it does is it restricts us into using some of what we could use on capital for things like, not emergency, but subsistence staffing at our schools. No. You noticed. Sorry, Ashley, but I just want to make sure.
So now let's look at the second chart on that green sheet of paper, the bottom. So this is where we've estimated potential revenue going into next year for capital. So state lottery, just the regular state lottery that we received when the lottery was put in place, 2.5 million is what we're expecting there. And then we also now receive, a couple of years after lottery was put in place, the state started giving us repairs and renovation. It's still coming through the lottery funding, but it's a different pot of money, and they limit things that we can do with that money. But we're anticipating $663,000 coming from that funding source. And then what you see for county appropriation is really my plug. Okay, so that's whatever was left is what I'm saying we would have to ask the county for. And so how I came up with the 28.4 million is I just took the priority 1 items from each of the categories. So for example, repairs and renovations, I included 7.5 million. For technology, I included 8.9 million. Furniture and equipment, I included 53,000. Vehicles, I included 164,800. And then for facilities capital, I included that whole amount, that 11.7. So that's where the 28.4 million comes from. So if we were to just ask for the priority 1 items, it would be 28.4 million. And so what I would like to do, if it's okay with the board, is just have everyone go through their priority 1 items. And then, of course, if the board has questions about anything else in that category, we'll be glad to answer those questions.
And don't forget, at the end, what we're going to ask you guys to do before we leave here is give us a target number that you'd like us to shoot for. I know.
If we add, will you have to take away?
Well, I
Do we
think,
have to balance it?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, I've got to bring you back a number. And if you want to add to the number, that's the
It
number.
increases the county request. So an
Right.
add would increase the county request unless you take something off to balance it.
And there may be some things that with Ashley, I mean, with Ms. Sutton and Mr. Anderson and I sit down and say, well, this is listed as a number 1. However, it's not broken. It's just something we want to fix. There are some things that could naturally slide down on the list as well, if we have to. We don't want to, but if we have to.
That's perfect. As you look at page 4, second from the bottom, it's a number 3, and I'd really like to move it up to a 1. So that's, projected budget is $455,000, but access control to kitchens. When you visit the schools next, see if you can get in through the kitchen. You probably can, and that bothers me in terms of security. Shouldn't be that way, but it happens that way because so many people come and go, the vendors come and go all day long, coming in the back door. And I would love to see that one security feature become a higher priority.
So if, maybe we'll start with Eddie, if you can get us started with, on page 1, the repairs and renovations, and just go through those priority 1 items for us.
Sure. Just briefly, I want to say that every school, every department has the opportunity to submit a capital request. And we maintain those on a very large spreadsheet. We prioritize those into 3 categories: imperative, essential, and important. We then take the imperative column and move it to a separate spreadsheet that you're looking at. And then we work very hard to prioritize that. So these are the highest priorities that we think are the highest priorities for the district. So in looking at page 1, I'll go through on the left-hand side, there's a column, priority 1. Replacing the underground storage tanks at our CVRC, our main lot for buses. That's been on the list for a while. We have the design completed. We're ready to proceed with bidding and construction. Our annual roof maintenance. Each year we have a roofing engineer on our roofs evaluating roofs And they'll give us two things. What is the maintenance that's needed? Because as I said earlier, we know we have to get more than 20 years out of every roof. So we try very hard to maintain them. And then what are the capital recover or replacement needs? And you'll see both of those on here. Minnie Evans replacing the band shell. There was a section of that broke. It cannot be repaired. That was original to the building in 2001. So we're replacing that completely.
And those are acoustic panels, correct?
This is, if you have, when the band plays,
Yeah.
there's an acoustical shell that
Right,
goes over
right.
that band, and that's
Gotcha.
that's what it is. Replacing playground equipment at Carolina Beach and Freeman. Replacing these are HVAC controls. There's an old system called Novar that's no longer it hasn't been available in a long time. The controls are obsolete and no longer supported by the manufacturer. So if it goes out, we will have no other option but just to go in with a replacement. Replacing the generator at Ashley. The generator is not for shelter use. This is for our emergency lighting and so forth if the building lost power. Replacing backflow preventers. These are on all of our buildings. We now have our plumbing staff certified to do these inspections, which saves some money, and we were eliminating that contract in our operating budget. But as we started doing that, we've identified these schools that need the backflow devices replaced. Replacing flooring at Forest Hills and Carolina Beach. Roof recover, Wrightsboro, Williston, fascia replacement at Bellamy. Myrtle Grove Middle School, this is, I've been working with NCDOT over the past couple of years. They now have funding to put a signal and a crosswalk at the exit directly across from Brown Pelican Lane.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so once that's, they're scheduling that work now, and when it's complete, this sidewalk will run from that crosswalk and connect back up to the existing sidewalks at Myrtle Grove. This is phase 3, actually. We've been replacing windows and doors at Alderman Elementary School. I don't know if you've been out there recently, but it has made a tremendous difference. Some envelope improvements at Holly Tree. We've made some HVAC improvements. That is helping, but to address the high humidity, we really need to repair the envelope in that building, doors, windows. And then if you go up into the attic space and you have all the lights out, you can actually see daylight where that wall and roof connection are. And we're never going to completely resolve the humidity issues there until that is corrected. Replacing multi-purpose room carpet at Porter's Neck and Castle Hayne. Carpet manufacturers no longer make athletic carpet, and we have tried different products, and honestly, it's just not working. The wear and tear on the carpet, it just doesn't hold up, and then we're not able to clean it well. So we're looking at some different options, possibly going back with like an LVT product. Some lighting upgrades, continuing to replace lighting with LEDs. Replacing HVAC equipment at CBRC. This is...
I'm sorry to
Sure.
cut you off there, but could you tell us what exactly you were talking about to replace the carpet with?
LVT, it's luxury vinyl tile. It's a little softer than your typical vinyl tile, but it is, it's easy, it's very durable and easy to clean.
What does that do to the sound? Because carpet absorbs sound and LVT doesn't?
It would have an impact with the sound, but there's acoustical sealant tiles in there, and I think it'll be fine. And we do have that in some of our schools. And so we have actually gone back and talked to Ms. Kaplanaitis, as well as some of the principals, and visited the schools with the LVT to see how it was holding up and how they liked it. Everyone seems very pleased with it. Stage curtain cleaning, this is continuing our cycle. Well, that's actually getting into number 2, but I'll go ahead.
Hold on a second.
That's continuing the cycle of treating our curtains as required in our auditoriums and multipurpose rooms. So that is all of the item number 1s.
On page 3, there's an item number 1. Is that a clerical mistake? Carolina Beach roof recovery.
Carolina Beach.
Yes, that's a clerical. That should be a 3.
Should be a 3? Okay.
And if I can, for Eddie too, a good example of something like, if you look at page 2, since we're already on page 2, go down to the very bottom, and you see the cooling towers and the chiller at Snipes and Freeman. Okay? They are currently working. They are currently functioning. And this is where you say, okay, well, let's just leave it alone. But that's where your fund balance comes in, where if it breaks in the middle of a year and we haven't budgeted for it, we have to pay for it, which is a challenge that we have because we really don't have that amount of wiggle that you would, if we had 20 million in fund balance, you'd be able to say, let's roll the dice. But you don't really have the latitude to use that as we would in the past. Actually, is that correct?
That's true. I agree with that. Ms. Barnhart? Thank you, Madam Chair. I did want to bring up, I've spoken to Chair Rivenbark a few times, and he has asked if there is like a running item list. So we know once we get our budget, things come up, like that was just brought to the attention. And so whatever this body decides as far as the target goal to come together for what both our capital and our improvement facilities asks, that is, but I think we should also consider having a line of communication. So during the year when we get an item that is not budgeted for, but it comes across that it needs to be addressed, we need to have that open line because potentially on the county level, there might be some budget adjustments that they can make so we can be more responsive in addition to tapping into our fund balance. But I wanted to bring that up because I think it's a good idea. I think it helps that line of communication and sharing consistently where the needs are. Because when they're seeing it and being responsive to it, and perfect example is New Hanover High School this year. There's been a very good response to the needs and understanding of it and committed to it because we've been in direct communication with them. So I think that we should, I don't know if it's a portal of sorts, but to have that open line of communication, I think will help with our county commissioners as far as funding goes. So just want to bring that up. Dr. Miller?
Thanks. I was kind of heading down the same rabbit hole with this. I mean, we do have this idea that if we have 500,000 set aside that we don't touch, and after that, the county commission is going to kick in with us. Now, I've also heard someone say that that was only for storm emergencies. We need to have it more than just storm emergencies. I mean, like this, how much are we talking about? A couple of these things go wrong, and we are deep in the hole real quick without a fund balance.
I can't emphasize enough, and it's been emphasized.
All right. So, and I will say that in our meetings with the county, they ask the question, what does it take to maintain the current facilities on an annual basis? And, if you scroll down to page 6, this starts the facility capital request. And the number one item there is a facility assessment.
So if you go in your binder, it's actually the blue page. So if you go ahead and flip past all of the white pages, you'll get to a blue page, and that's what he's going over now.
So, as I mentioned earlier with our roof assessments, I mean, we have reports that tell us when it was installed, what the decking is, what the insulation is, what the membrane is, what the warranty is, and when does the warranty expire, and what is the anticipated year that we need to replace it. And we want to have that same system for everything within our facilities. From
HVAC, roof,
electrical,
intercom,
plumbing,
electrical.
exactly. So the first line item is for a facility needs assessment, which will give us that information. The second one is safety and security upgrades. This is continuing our efforts to install security vestibules in schools. The next school up is Rolling Rice Middle School. Mobile units at Porter's Neck. We had installed 2 mobile units at Porter's Neck previously and had requested money for 2 last year but didn't receive it, so we're requesting that funding again this year. Artificial turf at Laney. You recall that the county funded the initial design for artificial turf. That design has been completed. This will fund the construction. Culinary arts classroom at New Hanover. Again, the county funded the design, which has been completed. This will allow us to bid the project and proceed. Cafeteria improvements at Laney due to increased enrollment, and also I'm happy to say increased participation. Laney's killing it. Carpentry and ROTC renovations at Hoggard. The classrooms do not meet the current instructional standards, and in working with CTE and the school, we came up with a plan to flip those 2 locations, and then these renovations would need to take place to make those facilities adequate. It is a 2. There's only a couple. I was gonna, when we were looking at this, we split it into 2 years. One being what we would be requesting the first year, 2 would be what we would be requesting the second year. And then we also talked about the design of River Lights, Williams, and Pond Valley. We used remaining 2014 bond funds to start those designs, do some preliminary planning, programming. We're up about the schematic design level. This would get us ready to bid so that if there was a bond in 2026, it passes, we would have 3 shovel-ready projects to start on. Then just the concession stand at New Hanover. This was prioritized lower because it will be addressed in the facility study and master plan that we're doing there. And then pre-K renovations at Howe, not as high as a priority as it was with the reduction in our pre-K numbers.
So I'll just give you one point to look at. If you go back to your green sheet for just 1 second, please. Hold your finger here because you're coming back. If you look at the green sheet, you can see on the bottom where that $11,739,000 for capital is. That facility capital does include number 1, 2, and 3 on our list. Okay? So, yeah, there are a lot of ones, but that does include all 3, while the others just include number 1. So I just want to make sure you saw that point.
The others, what are they?
Where you look at the repairs and renovations, technology, furniture, and vehicle are just ones. The facilities capital is all 3.
Definitely.
So when we're looking here, we're seeing, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and then we're seeing the 11.7 million for 1, 2, and 3
Right.
on facilities.
If you just wanted the 1, you would be at 6 million.
6 million, thank you.
Okay, so now if you wouldn't mind flipping back to your white pages, let's start with technology next. And technology starts on
6, I think.
page 6.
It is the white section, page 6.
And then I'll let Ms. Brinson go through her part.
Okay, first of all, I want to make sure that the year is corrected on, so at the top, the first column should be request for 24, 25. It's actually the second column, that's the 25, 26. No, my copy is not the correct. So we're looking at that second column where the total is the,
Page 6, are you looking on page 6?
see, my book is a little different than that.
So on my page 6, I see request for 25, 26 and a
Okay.
cumulative column.
I don't have a page 6. I go from page
Here.
5 to 8.
Will you pass this on down?
No, I think it was her binder.
Yeah, it's mine, yes. Okay,
Sorry about
thank
that,
you.
y'all.
No, that's fine. This is the correct sheet. So the first item on there, Nutanix, that is the system that basically houses all of our virtual servers. It's at the core. It allows us to save money on physical equipment as well as electricity and air cost. So the current system we have now is out of date, as well as the, we use VMware to do our virtual servers, and they have changed their pricing structure. That would, if we stay with them, would cost us substantially more than what we would like to pay. Okay. The second item on there is the one-to-one sustainability. That is the cost for just the devices for the students and staff. The plan would be at grades 3, 6, and 9 every year if they would get devices in. So every new third grader would get a device. Then they'd have it from 3rd through 5th, 6th through 8th, and then 9th through 12th. And then we'd have iPads in K2 classrooms for the students to use. So that would be the cost, and that would be like a yearly cost to maintain and sustain one-to-one. Yep, annual. The second item is our security cameras. So we have gone through, looked at all of our cameras, and have done a 10-year sustainability plan. And so estimated cost, depending on tariffs, is about $685,000, and that's basically to do it in 10 years, because we do a 10-year license, so that way the support for 10 years would be covered for anything happening, replace whatever, for those 10 years.
So that 685 would cover cameras that are more than 10 years old currently.
That 685 would cover replacing, let's see, I think 2013. Most of our cameras are over 10 years old right now, so it's just they all need to be replaced.
Correct, okay.
This would just be, to do it all at one time would not be the best way to do it, because then when they have time to replace, it's all at one time. So we need to spread it out, so we're doing it a little bit each year.
So this
And
would be 685 a year for the next 10 years?
Correct.
Got it.
Mr. Wilcox?
In our discussion the other day with principals, one of the principals from the Hanover High School actually said that his cameras, when they updated the software, cameras are now working.
He actually has new cameras.
He's got new cameras, that's why, okay. that
Yes,
makes
not just the
sense.
software, he has new cameras.
Okay.
Dr. Merritt?
I notice we're talking about 26, 27 numbers right now, rather than,
No.
I apologize, what's in Assembly is not correct, I believe that may have been
Yes,
what
it's 25, 26.
So,
if you look, I don't know if you could share with,
You want to look at the next column over.
well, we got the same page.
I mean, if you look at the board, that's what I'm looking at. I'm not quite sure I understand.
Okay, so ignore this.
I would say yes, this might be better.
Okay. Okay.
It's only got one column.
Yeah, that's fine. You have the right one in your document. Yeah.
So what the fuck is this here?
That's a good question.
Hang on, Ms. Bradford?
Just to remind me, Ms. Brinson, the one-to-one sustainability, what year did we get the one-to-one cameras?
The sustainability is the devices.
Laptop, pieces of equipment, sorry.
We are in the fourth year of implementation, so we started it about 4 years ago. Basically, when COVID came.
I remember it, and I remember the argument with board members wanting it to easily pass was that these are going to last us for years and years and years. And this just brings us back to the equipment argument. Equipment doesn't last 10 years. Not, maybe it, my old Maytag went 30 years, but my new Maytag's only going to go 3 or 4 years.
Correct.
It's just the way they're doing technology now. So.
And we have gotten, like the laptops we have now at the elementary schools, we've gotten like 7 years out of them, but those haven't gone home. They've always stayed at the schools. So the wear and tear isn't as much as when they send them home. But if schools are assigning, projects and work for kids to do at home, we need to give them devices to have at home. The other piece of it was, the reason why we're strongly encouraging schools to send them home is if there's a snow day, if there's a hurricane, whatever, because those things, unfortunately, we don't know ahead of time if it's coming. Sometimes it's literally kid goes home and then they don't come back, and then if they don't have the device, then they're not able to participate in that work during that remote work day.
Thank you. And the second line underneath that, the cameras.
Yes.
The discussion last night about the cameras and the software company not supplying cameras, this is how we would make up for cameras over a 10-year period that don't function now, correct?
Well, they do function now. They just aren't the best quality now. But yes, this is how we would be replacing them each year.
Dr. Merritt?
I have a feeling that this is a larger conversation than just tech. It goes to curriculum, it goes to a whole lot of things, but we know that, or I know from my studies in brain science, that we learn differently when we use a pen and pencil than if we were on a typewriter. And I oftentimes wonder with the cost whether some of our younger students wouldn't do better with, there's a balance, right? Learning to use technology, you gotta live in this world. But at the same time, having less dependence on it all the time activates different areas of the brain, and it's productive, and it also might save us money. So unless it all of a sudden means, now we have to buy textbooks, and that's going to cost something, right? So.
Yeah, in K2, when we're putting the iPads, we're only putting like a set of 10 in the classroom. We're not doing one-to-one because not all the kids are going to be on a device at the same time. I will say also, if you have visited schools, all the kids, when you go to classrooms, they're not always on their devices. So even though the kid has a device all the way through high school, it is not sitting open being used the entire time that they're at school. I've gone in many of classes and the computers aren't out. The kids are having conversations, communicating, as well as writing and doing other projects other than being on their computer.
Is there any way to save and have less devices?
The problem is then when we've had like just mobile labs in the classrooms and the teachers have to share, then it's a matter of, is there a cart available when I need it? And then again, it's the homework piece, because not all kids have devices at home. So it's that ability for them to have it there. And with a lot of the curriculum, and even, the schools that don't have the standard curriculum like you have at the elementary school, your high schools, where the teachers find resources online, they're still finding resources online. And even when we had the mobile labs, teachers were giving assignments that required internet use, and then kids were using cell phones, which is ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, and every kid has to have the same amount of access, so I do appreciate that.
Yep. Okay. So the next item are our new line devices. Those are the interactive boards, much like what's in the room next door that you guys have used. Again, we have done a 7-year sustainability plan for that, and basically it's that $1.166 million. That's the warranty is a 7-year warranty, so that way if there's something happens to it, we get it replaced right away, and so that would handle that process. One thing we are looking at that could possibly change that price would have conversations with the high schools. Our high schools now have the boards, which are a little bit more expensive than if you buy just a TV. It all depends on how they use them. And So if they just use to connect their device and they're not up there using the touch screen or all the software that comes with it, if they're just using it as a display, then they don't need that new line. But it would have to be a whole school decision because we can't have some classrooms with one and some classrooms with the other. Because as soon as you have a new teacher in that classroom, they may want something different, and that's just not manageable. But that's a conversation that we'll have with our high school principals. Okay? The next item is desktop replacement. Our next two items are desktop replacement. We do have to move to Windows 11. And we have some time, and there's an extended time that we get, but knowing that we don't always necessarily get everything we ask for in capital, we're starting to ask for it now. So there are 281 desktop replacements that would have to be replaced. They're not able to, they don't have the hardware requirements to be able to run Windows 11. So those would be some that are in, like in the nurse's office, some of the library stations where they check out books. On the back of the Recordex, because on the back of those panels and new lines, we actually put a computer and then a wireless keyboard and mouse, so that way whoever's using that, whether it be a sub or whether it be a fill-in, somebody has a computer there and they're able to use it and they're not relying on the teacher giving up their device. So that's what those would be. And then there's an additional 752 devices that would have to be, they're about 7 years old again, that can't be upgraded. These, if we continue the one-to-one, we would not need. So if we're able to get the 5.5 or 5.4 million, then we would not need the additional 701,000 because those are covered underneath or 707,000 under the one-to-one plan. Okay.
And to Dawn's credit as well, this has also been an ask for being done.
Yes.
It's also been something we've discussed about whether this is an appropriate bond program. So she is attacking this in several different fronts, simply because we know that this is a big item.
And put it in local as well. And this doesn't include, especially with the one-to-one, it doesn't include the staff to troubleshoot, maintain, like additional technicians for the number of devices, or the additional digital teaching and learning specialists who are out there to provide professional development to the teachers, to try and get the teachers to change the way in which they're teaching. So it's not everything is online or a teacher presenting and kids having to absorb it. They're actually trying to get the teachers to do more of the blended learning and doing more of the project-based learning, so the kids are actually doing more creating of stuff versus just consuming information. Then our wonderful thing that we love, intercoms. That's the next item on there. We did again a sustainability plan for that. I think that is a 15-year, but to be able to do that rotation, it would be $333,000 a year. The following item is replacing outdated monitors. These would be year 3. We have still some teachers in the elementary schools that have little 15-inch monitors, and we want to get those out of there, or 17-inch monitors, and give them bigger monitors so it's easier for them to see. That is all of our priority ones.
Ms. Brinson, I know this is not, I don't know if this is necessarily pertinent, but are the monitors up on the dais, would those be able to be used in for any of our teachers?
Yes, and we're taking the computers away that are up there and going to put those out in schools. And what we were going to do is put a dock up there. A plan was to put a dock up there and leave the keyboard and mouse and the monitor, so that way you guys could hook yours up so you could see a bigger monitor versus seeing yours. But if you don't think you need the monitors, we can take those away too.
I mean, would that be a cost savings for us if we were to just not all use those? And
It would save you, it'd save you a little bit of money,
right.
yes.
Right, we have these, and that's kind of the thinking.
Yep.
If we can save money somehow,
We will
not have those.
We will gladly take all of it.
If the board is okay with that. I think that would be a great way to save at least a little bit of money.
What can we get for that?
Nothing, and we give it to a school.
Well, you could move it over to the board budget as a credit.
You're trying hard.
Yeah. I mean, I will point out that Ashley mentioned the $500,000 each and every year. This year we spent, $37.5 on getting that study done, but that's a pretty good increase. And we want it to go for teachers. Of course we do. Just give us a couple of bucks. Give us 10 grand out of it.
Or lack thereof.
All right. Ms. Brinson, are you good?
Yep. Perfect. And do we have no other technology questions before we move on to furniture and equipment? I'm good. All right, so on page 7, this is a white sheet as well. You'll see the furniture and equipment request. So looking at priority 1, there's a request for $30,000 for custodial equipment, and we ask for that $30,000 every year to replace the custodial equipment at the schools. The media center furniture request, $12,000 to replace some furniture at Freeman, $11,000 to replace some media furniture at Bellamy. And then those are our top 3 items. That brings us to that 53, if I remember correctly, sorry. It's page 7. Yep. And so that brings you to the 53,000 that was on the green sheet as for the priority ones. Any questions about furniture or equipment, those 3 items, or anything else on that page? Okay, next up we have vehicles. Do you want to take that one, Eddie, or do you want me to
This one will be easy.
knock out that first one?
We're asking for 172 passenger activity bus.
This is page 8. Sorry about that. It's a white page, page 8. It's the first row.
We are getting concerned with our activity buses traveling out of county, out of state. Well, we won't take them out of state. But, so we are requesting 1 new activity bus.
The page numbers in the book are different than the page numbers here, so.
And,
Yeah,
I found
You should
that.
rely on the book. Rely on the book, don't rely on
that.
our, yeah, when they're giving those pages.
When in doubt, look at that.
Is there any way to take that off of Assembly and replace it with the correct one?
Yes, we will replace that after the meeting.
Just not at the moment.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you, guys.
It's page 9 on Segway.
so that's it.
Questions about
Actually 10, sorry.
that's all we have for capital? Our business is all we have. And so now I'll back over to the board for discussion. Thanks.
So we are tasked with prioritization of what we would like, yes?
So we've done what we think is a good solid job with this group bringing you a balanced operating budget. This is our facility and capital budget. I think for us to proceed to the final step, which is bringing you a budget that you guys can approve and then bring it to the county commissioners, is what number you want us to hit. And I know that's a hard question, but for us to bring it to you, what I don't want to do is bring you one and you guys say, geez, we can't do that, and then we're back and forth and back and forth. I think if you guys can give us at least a range maybe, or a target you want us to try to hit for, I think that's our next step, is to sit down and do that work.
So, if I go to the green sheet, and I go all the way over to the other side there, 41,309 is the top number.
It's 1, 2s, and 3s.
It's 1s, 2s, and 3s, but that's the, dare I say, the maximum number, and if we went with that, then we wouldn't balance, correct?
Well, I wouldn't say we wouldn't balance, we would have to ask the county commissioners for that amount of money.
Okay, so what is in the budget now for that item, for that, what do you call it, object?
So we didn't get any new capital money this year.
Right.
The year before, we got 10 million, and we're
Right.
still working on those projects related to the 10 million. And we also have a little bit of carryover from previous capital years as well. Eddie, I don't know if you want to speak. So I don't know if using this year's is a good target, because really it's carryover capital from previous years, because we didn't get.
So this is an additional request on top of the 8 million?
Correct.
Yes,
Okay, that's
The
correct.
8 million is for
Yep.
our
8 million is operational.
Correct.
This is an add-on. This is a supersized me.
well, it's an assessment of our facility and capital needs.
Mr. Wildebohr.
Oh, good, I can talk now. Well, since I am, I guess, the chair of the capital committee, one of the things I want to bring forth is the fact that we need this stuff. This isn't a situation that we can say, well, next year, we do and we are. The number twos are next year, number threes are the following. So the number ones, if you look at the bottom here, is $28.4 million. Even if you, take off another $5 million, if you go to facilities capital and just go to number ones, that would be $6 million. I mean, that was right to my way of thinking. If you want to, and you want to knock that down, you're at 23 million approximately. That's what we need. I mean, that's and that's still, as Dr. My colleague over there mentioned, we also still could, a chiller could go out, and we're like, oh my goodness, need more. But I mean, this is, I mean, if we don't ask for it, I guarantee we won't get it.
Ms. Justice?
Yeah, I can remember 5, 6 years ago, I used to be on the capital committee. I can remember the same discussion. We have full hospitals. I know you guys are sick of hearing me say this. For those of you who haven't heard me say it before, I've been saying it since they did it. That money's sitting $1.5 billion in the bank. The sales agreement said very first line, public schools first. I know the endowment board's gone through all kinds of permutations, and they're still not sure how they're giving things out or when or why, in all truth. The county commissioners, if they can get 4 votes, they have the ability to do this immediately. This is a literally drop in the bucket. We can go for a bond issue, which we need for the schools. But every year that this stands, every year they keep falling apart, and it gets worse and worse and worse. That's the facts. If you don't, it's like your roof. If you keep letting your roof leak, everything's going to rot under it. And that's why we're in the position we're in now, is because decades past, that's why I was bringing it up with Eddie. Decades past, they keep kicking it down. But this is our kids. These are our public schools. So I'm going to continue to advocate for that bond money, not the bond money, well, yeah, we need the bond money,
That too.
sure. But for some of that endowment, not the endowment money, but the actual hospital sale money, which in the sales document, and I'll give you all a copy if you'd like to see it. Number one thing is public schools.
Dr. Merritt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, as I watched last year, as we went through the budget process, and we had a $20 million shortfall, and, we ended up asking for, well, first they said they'd give us 5, but we said, but we really need 10, and they really gave us, 5 of that, and then some other stuff that made it look like they got 10. It reminds me of what my father used to say when you said, Dad, can I have $20? He said, $10, I'm not going to give you $5. I think we have to stop feeling sorry for the county commissioners. We have to say, this is what we need. We're not being brats here. We're not being spoiled educators, right? Our kids need these things. So, frankly, I'd ask for the 41. I wouldn't ask for the 28. But knowing that we wouldn't get that likely, I would want to put in a stipulation that says, not just for storms, but we need to have an agreement that when we need something extra and we don't have a fund balance to go to, we need to have, some sort of a blank check for when we need something, I'd like to put a stipulation in whatever ask we have that says, not just for storms. We have to know that the county fund balance can be used for schools.
Ms. Bradley?
I would agree with that, unless the staff has some reason why they think that would be terrible.
Just a couple of clarifying questions. I want to make sure that we understand that what we don't want to do is then say, well, you can have the $8 million that you're asking for in operating, and we'll just move it into capital. Those are 2 separate requests.
No, I
And
meant
those
just
are
that.
needs as well.
No,
So I
no.
want to make sure that we are kind
misunderstood
of
me.
thinking about that. No, I didn't think you said that. I was just
I
making
was
sure.
talking
I
about
clarified.
the, not just for storms part.
Yeah, no, my question though to Eddie and Dawn specifically is, if they did 1 versus 1, 2, and 3, or whatever, is there a tipping point to the number of things that we can accomplish in a year? And is that a factor we need to be thinking about? Do you know what I mean? Because,
They generally ask about that.
yeah, because, well, I would, if I have to respond to that question, I'm not sure what the ask is. Is there a place where we say, if we got all the 1s done, we'd be maxing out our people anyway? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
It does, and I'm comfortable in accomplishing all the number one priorities. If you added the 2s and 3s, that, I'm not sure we have.
We're stretching into next year anyway.
Yeah, I don't think we have the current staff to do that.
So, okay, repairs and renovations, category 1 is 7537. Because I was going to say, if we took the subtotal capital requests at the 28.8, which I think is what Mr. Wildebohr said, even if we asked for half of that, that would take us to 14.7, well, 14.8. So keeping in mind 14.8, you could rearrange that any way you need it, but I'm concerned that the facilities for capital is not included in that, am I correct?
In the 28.8, yes
Yeah.
it is.
It's underneath it. It's included in the 40, but not the 28.8.
It is, look down the 28.8, look at the second line from the bottom. 11,739,000.
Ah, okay, okay. So, yeah, under those circumstances, I'd say, let's do the 28.8. Let's ask for the 28.8. I can't tell you the number of times I've heard we need to keep, from them, we need to keep up the facilities and not let them fall apart. It's not a partisan issue. Everyone knows if you don't maintain it, it falls apart, and then it costs you twice as much. So, Mr. Wildebohr said 28.8. I'm, let's ask him for the 28.8 for capital.
I wanted to just make sure, because Ms. Barnhart had to step out, so she gave me what her priorities were, and so I wanted to kind of make sure that her voice was heard even if she's not here. So she said goal to reduce priority 1 to 8 million. Facilities capital priority 1, which would make it, I guess that's the focus, only the priority 1, which would make it 6 million, for a total of 14 million. And she mentioned that 5.2 is coming from lottery. Is that an accurate assessment?
So lottery, we're going to get 2.5.
2.5.
And then the 663,000.
And so then she said that our ask is 8 million in operating. We're also asking from the endowment, so if we can secure that, then that should get us, I'm trying to read her writing, then that helps to get us to the 8 million increase and 6 million in facility. And we do have to have a bond conversation because this won't be fixed in just 1 year. So that was Ms. Barnhart's feedback, but I also wanted to kind of share mine. In hearing what Mr. Anderson is saying, if we ask for all of these to be funded, our staff is not going to be able to get all of them done in the 1 year. And if that's indeed the case, and we ask for the money and then don't get it done, what is the response going to be from our commissioners? I don't want to ask for more. I know we need it, but then we don't do the job. I want to make sure that we're working within not just our financial means, but also with our staffing abilities. And so I would make the recommendation to only go as well with the priority ones in all of the categories. That's right.
So can one of you tell us what we're currently asking the endowment for that would be in addition to this?
Yes, the large ticket items, I guess you could say, that we have talked to the endowment about the $4 million for the school specialists that you saw on the first page, which would reduce what the county asked from 8 million to 4. We've also asked them for the laptops for the 5 million. So those are the sort of the large ticket items. Of course, they're already funding some things already, but those are the two. Dawn, Ashley, am I thinking of anything else outstanding? We also asked the county for the safe and civil schools training. We've also asked the endowment for that as well. So those are the, and the book bus. The book bus is a rather small ask, but that's in there as well.
So we're asking the county and the endowment for the safe and
Civil schools and for the laptops and for the specialists.
Okay,
Because
so
what
it's a
I
double
wanted to
ask.
provide the county with was options to support us.
Dr. Merritt?
But some of what you just said is operating and some of it is facilities, yes?
Correct. Or capital.
Capital, yes, sorry. So My concern is if we go to the county thinking, well, maybe we're going to get this from the endowment because we've asked for it,
Right.
and then we don't get it, then can't go back to the county and say, oh, sorry, we need more.
Right.
Right?
He's doing a double ask, he's asking both.
Right, so if we need to ask both, and if it's fair to be able to say, and by the way, county commissioners, if we do get this from the endowment, it will reduce our ask, right?
And in some of those conversations that we've been having, they're aware of that too.
Okay.
So,
If we said that our 1s, 2s, and 3s are really us looking 3 years out, and I know that we can't say that we're sure, because we don't know what's going to break, right? But I do want to tell you that if you look out in the parking lot, you're going to see what I'm driving, which I think we would call an end-of-life replacement. And it still drives, and it still gets me from point A to point B. I think we've got to provide some, here's my wondering. If we put everything in it, it's 41 million. What would stop us from saying to the county, we'd like to break that 41 million over 3 years?
That's 86,438 a year. I just did the math.
Not in 3 years, it
86,000.
wouldn't be.
The 28, oh, you're talking about the 40.
breaking it up into
Yeah.
3 years.
Okay, I was taking the 28, sorry.
Breaking that up into 3 years.
I mean, what would it look like if we said to the county, we want to give you a list of everything we need, but we also need to know that we need to pace ourselves to do due diligence, to be good stewards of the money, all those things. And what if we gave them, this is what we're going to ask you for the next 3 years?
Well, the costs are going to
13
go
million,
up.
Saturday, 13.
Ms. Brinson? Yes, that's, let's let Ms. Brinson go.
Like, I did not do a 26.
I know you didn't.
For that, so like, for the technology, for the.
Yeah, I
You know,
get it.
that is
Those
just
are
to.
re-
no,
those are repeatable
Yeah,
offenses.
you're going to have that 8 million over there because the 5 million for the intercoms and everything else. So I can definitely put that together for you, but that is not what that number is.
Oh, good point.
Well, that would take you to 14. I mean, it looks like if you can split this 2 or 3 different ways. What Josie came up with was about 14 million. If we take the 28.8 and we divide it in half, it's 14.7. So it looks like we're looking at about 14 million a year, no matter how you divide it.
But that only gets you 1 year of those laptops, and that was a year per year, and the cameras were a year per year.
I don't quite,
Dr. Ray?
yeah, I don't understand how we came up with, we were just talking about 28 million, and now we're talking 14, and I don't understand the math.
So we're trying, so instead of saying, hey, this is how much we want this year, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, looking and saying, these are the needs that we have right now, this is how much this will cost us. Over the next 3 years, would you be willing to cover a fixed amount every single year? The problem is, it doesn't work that way for our tech.
It also
So-
doesn't work because in 2 years, some of these estimates are going to be so old and so undervalued, right? I do appreciate what you're saying, that it's not really 28 million, it's actually 23 million maybe, right? If we take only the number ones, so the facilities, capital stuff. I'd be comfortable asking for 23 million plus stipulation, plus the fund balance stipulation concept.
Not just storm.
I'd second that.
21?
If you wanna make that a motion.
23.
Hold on, let Dr. Burns say something.
Don't forget that of that 28, 3 million and change is coming from the lottery. So
Okay.
only 25 is a county endowment ask.
25.
Not endowment, county.
County ask.
commissioner ask.
Minus the 5,000 because our facilities and capital is actually a 3, is all 1, 2s, and 3s.
Yeah, so if you took the 5 million off of that, you'd be looking at 20 million for just the ones, just the county.
Got it.
Well, we need
I
all.
mean, I think that's
All the
bare
ones.
bones, isn't it?
I agree with you. If you want to make a motion, I'll second.
I make a motion that we ask for that 20 million with the stipulation that if something breaks that we're not ready to, that we can't cover within this budget, that we get some help from their fund
But the
balance.
storm balance is not just for storm.
It's not just a storm balance.
The
yeah.
fund balance is not just for storm.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Dr. Burns, go ahead.
Sorry. No, I don't want us to, we're not paupers either. We have been very careful with our spending this year. I don't want you to think that if we lost a chiller at a building, that those children would be without. We would maneuver money around, we would use vacancy savings. There is restricted fund balance that we have some access to. So I don't want you to think that we will still get the job done. But I like what you're saying with is, if an emergency happens that we aren't planning for, until we can build our fund balance to what, 10 million, whatever it is, we need a little bit of give. But I don't want people to walk out of here thinking that, you know, if a thermostat breaks, you're out of luck. You know, we do have some maneuvering room, just not what we are comfortable with. Is that, Ms. Sutton, is that right? Is that accurately said? Okay.
Okay.
So,
Mr.
to
Bradford?
recoup, this is the repairs and renovations, number one,
Yep.
for the county at 20 million, plus the stipulation fund balance, not just for storms. That's the motion.
No, not repairs and renovations, everybody's number one.
Ah, okay, thank you. I knew I was missing
Repairs,
something.
technology, furniture, equipment.
Capital request.
Vehicle and facility.
Capital request.
Plus the capital request. The capital request, and Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong, the capital request, if we only did the facility capital number ones, would be 5,900 and, thank you, 5,965,000, let's see what it is.
And what was the other 3 million that you wanted to take off?
Did I really get it right?
Is
5,975. So it would take 5 million off your ticket.
So, Dr. Merritt, can you restate your motion?
Yes, I make a motion that we ask for all of our number one priorities, including number one, facilities and capital, that after we take off the lottery money, brings us to a little north of $20 million, and that we put in a stipulation that if we are in an emergency, not just because of a storm, that the county commission will, you know, have the same agreement that we use that first 500,000 of restricted funds from our fund balance, and then they would help us after that.
Second that again.
Just wanted to make sure we were all clear on the motion. So is there any further discussion on that? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes 5-0. Ms. Justice?
I started on the board 2018, under a different superintendent. I've been through a couple superintendents now, and I've worked in other districts. I would like to thank the process that we are going through now, and the actual realistic ask that I have never heard since I have been in this district. I don't know if the commissioners will go for it, but this is what our schools need so they won't keep deteriorating. This is the reason New Hanover High School is in the shape it was in. So thank you, by the way. Thank you, and thank you. Thank you, all of you people up here, thank you, that are helping us out so much.
Ms. Bradford?
Move to adjourn.
No, can I make one more statement? Sorry. I don't get the call.
So I just want to wrap this up, so everyone knows where we are. So I'm going to take the discussion we had today, I'm going to bring back to agenda review, a presentation, the same information we talked today, to give you guys one more chance if there's anything you want to change in the budget. Discussion, and then I'll actually bring April 1st at the that board meeting, the same budget for actual approval of the budget and the county request, and then after that meeting, I'd be able to guys approve.
All right, so technically we are 75-80% there?
Yes.
Very good.
Excellent.
We haven't had a fight. Isn't it awesome?
Oh, hold on, give me a minute.
Dr. Merrick? Go ahead, Dr. Merrick.
And of course, when I see that number, 20 million, it sounds so round. It almost sounds like we're throwing it out there. So I would love to see it with dollars and cents in there so that it's not, no one thinks that we're just throwing out a round number.
Yeah, and we'll recap everything, taking out the 2s and 3s, and give you a better, one shot. Now, for what we're doing next is we're still working through some of the allotments at schools and making sure we're maximizing the amount of positions we can put out to schools. We have some positions at central office that we're reevaluating. So we're still working on sort of the finalist part of things for our operating budget, knowing that we've already got sort of the round figure of what we're looking for. So that'll give us a couple weeks to make sure that we've provided as much to the schools as we can, that we're still operating at peak efficiency, and we can clean this all up for you. But that's going to hit our target of getting it to the county early. And I can guarantee we'll be the first budget they have hold of.
And then we take off after that.
Yeah, and then you can stop coming to meetings every week.
I'm sorry?
And we bring some of this to the finance commissioners up there, right?
Gotta be up to Ashley.
So we have shared a lot of this information already for the operating budget, so the long legal sheet we went over in the beginning. What we have not shared with the Finance Committee is the capital information. So we had, Ms. Bradford, we had discussed bringing that information to the Finance Committee because we hadn't shared capital yet. So we could do that if you would like.
And we could tell them what we think our recommendation as a board would be.
We could share that it's the superintendent proposal that would go to the board.
It's after agenda review, so.
Because now that I have the guidance from you folks, we're pretty much ready to build our
We
proposal.
just have to, yeah, put it together, pull it together.
I'll second that.
Do what now?
What,
Oh, well, that was like a half minute ago, sir.
Yeah, I just enjoyed it.
Do you want to make it again?
Oh, second.
I just heard it. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
We are adjourned.
I like it here. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, we like it here.
I'm gonna get some,